This is Marketing Uncomplicated. Welcome back, everybody. Today I'm joined by someone who has been shaping some of the biggest brands we know and love. Sheila Butler is an accomplished chief marketing officer with more than 25 years of experience driving brand transformation, marketing strategy, and a loyalty program designed across powerhouse organizations like Disney, JP Morgan Chase, Choice Hotels, and Axiom Bank. Sheila is the founder and chief marketing officer of Butler Marketing Group in Orlando. She's close by to me, guys. I'm just south of her, where she helps companies rethink their customer experience, reimagine partnerships, and build marketing strategies that actually move the needle. Something all of us need to be focused on when we hire external vendors. She's also the host of Marketing Over Bourbon. I love the name of that show, Sheila. A show where she pairs good conversation with good spirits, something I can definitely get behind. Today, we'll dive into Sheila's career lessons, her views on where marketing is heading, and what leaders need to do to create brands that not only glow, but endure. Sheila, welcome to the show. It's so good to have you.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here. What a lovely introduction. Thank you.
So let's dive in. I want to take a little bit of a step back, as I always do, and I feel like if people have been listening to this podcast, they always hear me say that in the beginning. But let's talk a little bit about your journey. So you've had an incredible career. I mean, some big names: Disney, JP Morgan, Choice Hotels. What was the through line across all of these experiences that shaped your approach to marketing today and really helped you step into starting your own firm?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it's a complex answer. I would say I didn't intend to be in marketing. I didn't major in marketing. I majored in music and business/arts administration. And my dream since I was 6 was to work at Disney. It just felt like home.
Yeah.
And I had been in entertainment for a couple years, and I worked on a lot of event productions of like big special events for Disney, and a lot of like press events and so forth, and big new milestones in what they call the Disney decade, where Michael Eisner was looking for 10% growth year over year for 10 years. So there was enormous amount of expansion. And I became fascinated with how Disney used special events to brand their theme parks and create associations that would make sense to consumers that would then drive their behavior to book a Disney trip. And so I convinced someone in marketing, I don't know why they listened to me, but I convinced them to bring me on for a project.
Yeah.
And then I just kept getting more projects within the special events development team. And at the time, they were rolling out brand management. It was like getting an MBA at Harvard in branding.
Yeah.
Because they were teaching everyone at the same time. And so I just kind of got hooked into it. But the through line in my career has been test, learn, optimized, and using data-driven results to then create business strategies that align the business objectives with what marketing needs to do to deliver on those objectives. And I've learned that through the large organizations that I've been blessed to be a part of.
You said it so fantastically. I love that because it is the way, and exactly the way you say it. I don't even need to reinstate it. It's just the perfect way and that's why I think you kept getting asked back, because it's just the system and the cycle that works, and then you implemented it, and it works like a well-oiled machine at the end of the day. And that's where I love to hear things like this, because marketing is not complicated, and it's simplified in its purest form. And you just did that. And that's why they kept having you back.
Yeah. Thank you. I mean, it's the fundamentals, right?
Yes.
And it's not necessarily textbook marketing. Like I took, marketing class in college and I just learned everything out of a textbook. We don't sit around talking about the 4 Ps.
Yes.
But you're doing these things. So it's not taking the theory, but it's taking what's tried and true, what works, and then just mapping out the strategy fundamentals and only using that. So business objective, then what's the marketing objective that we need? What's the communication objective? And then the marketing strategy, and then the communication strategy. And only then do you get to talk about, I think the tactic is an email or a direct mail. And all these different things, right? I think people skip over the strategy piece because it makes them uncomfortable and they haven't learned it. So they go to what's safe.
Yes, I completely agree with you. You in looking back, was there a pivotal project or campaign that taught you your biggest lesson early on in your career?
One of the biggest ones still was working on the Disney Visa credit card launch. So back then, JP Morgan Chase had not merged with Bank One. And Bank One had a co-brand credit card portfolio, but they didn't really have their own proprietary brands like what Chase has today. So you're
Yeah.
really relying upon signing partnership deals to expand your business. And so we negotiated with Disney for a year and a half and then had
Yeah.
to build a loyalty program from scratch because Disney didn't have one. And then
Yes.
we had to build the technology platform to execute this loyalty program because the technology didn't exist at Bank One. And along the way, you had to teach banking people Disney speak, and it's a guest, not a customer, and
Yes.
the Disney way of thinking. And then Disney had to learn financial services marketing and all the regulatory requirements that come along with that. So there was a
Yes.
lot of very like cross knowledge sharing. And we did some really interesting things during that launch that I would love to see more people do. So, one internally was I wrote an email every day per my boss that went through the entire organization called This Day at Disney. And it was like literally going through the history of on September 24th in
Hmm.
1934, this is what happened at Disney. Because the whole strategy was get the entire organization excited around what we were doing, because it was also a big resource suck for anything else
Yes.
to get done,
Yes.
right? When you have a big tech project, everybody else gets put to the side. So that was one thing internally. But when we were launching the card, we didn't have a list of people to communicate to for the launch of the card.
Yeah.
Other than Disney would capture email and physical addresses if you were willing to opt into third party marketing. And so we said, well, how are we going to get the word out? And so we created this pre registration campaign because you can't apply for a credit card that doesn't exist. And when you do apply per the government, you have 30 days to get approved and receive your card in the mail.
Yes.
So we came up with this concept of a pre registration, and it was this image of Mickey Mouse's hand holding a little secret suitcase with a big lock on it. And it said something along the lines of, do you want to know the new Disney secret?
Yeah.
If so, register your email here. And then the day of, we'll inform you. So we had this announcement. So we captured email addresses from that. And then the day that we were launching, we gave everyone, we called it day one, but it was really about 2.5 weeks. We
Yeah.
said, if you apply today or within this small time frame, you will, as long as you keep your account open, have embossed on your credit card day one card member, and
Yeah.
then below your name, charter card member. And then we also gave out a small little pin that says, I'm day one. People still to this day won't close their account because they never get that day one or charter card member back. And they get recognized when they use the card at Disney and someone says, oh my goodness, you're a day one card member. Like you've literally
Yeah.
had this card for like 23 years.
Yeah.
And so it's almost like a badge of your passion for the brand and your engagement and loyalty to the brand. I haven't seen people try to replicate that in other launches, but it tapped into something very emotional and deep within the most passionate of Disney audiences.
Yeah. Wow. That's pretty incredible. And that's interesting. So they would recognize that day one when they were at Disney on the card.
Yeah, so they were trained early on. I haven't seen it as
Wow.
much. So
So it's almost like, I mean, it's like it's in the sense of like what we talk about in marketing. The customer is really, they really feel seen.
right. So, yeah,
Yeah.
we worked with Visa to have day one embossed on the card. We found a special place on
Mm.
it. And then we also said underneath your name, where you would normally, like, if you have a Marriott card, it might be your Marriott loyalty number. That's where we printed in charter card member. And only the year one people have charter card member. But if you're day one, that means you're one of the very first.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
another
Wow.
one was it took us 2.5 years, I'm negotiating with Disney and the bank for us to convince Disney to put the characters on the cards.
Yeah.
Originally, it was just a red Mickey Mouse head. And we saw a consistent lift in acquisitions as well as in sales
Yes.
based upon the characters being on the card. And then we would track the spend because you have multiple card designs. We would track the spend, and you can see that the more sort of gender neutral characters had higher spend because at the time, both the primary card member and the authorized user had to have the same card design. Only later could each person have a different card design. So it was fascinating to learn all these things. Again, it's data and then using that data to drive the strategy forward.
Yeah.
Try
Wow.
what
I love
works,
that. Yeah.
optimize, and then don't do it again if it doesn't work. Boom. Easy.
100%, 100%, 100%, 100%. Many marketers talk about brand transformation, but you've lived it at scale. What does brand transformation actually mean in practice? And I'm sure you have stories of these in terms of the companies that you've been at and all of that.
I do. You know what's funny is when I started my company, which is almost 2.5 years ago now,
Yep.
I knew that I wanted to focus on branding and loyalty and strategy and fractional CMO work. But more than 20 years ago, I had a friend who I knew from Disney. He had bought an entertainment production company. And he said, "Can you do my website?" And I said, "Sure." And I go, "Okay, what should I say?" He goes, "I don't know. You're going to write the website." And I go, "But what do you stand for? What audience do you want to attract? Who are you competing against?" He goes, I don't know. So I used what I learned at Disney and at a fintech startup and a couple other places. And I started cobbling together what is now Butler Branding Bootcamp. So you look at the competitive landscape and the framework and the space that you want to occupy, and what are they saying and what's ownable is white space for you. And then you build out all of the brand attributes, the tangible, rational things, and then the very intangible, emotionally connecting things. And then from that strategy, you write all the marketing messaging. And then you wrap that around the visual and so forth based upon how you define the brand personality. So from that, you get the typography, the colors, the mood boards, and so forth for all of your creatives. And so I think that brand transformation to me means that you can either create a brand from the ground up, be it a product or a service or a brand new company, or you can take something and say, how are you changing? And how do we need to re-describe you to your audience or introduce you to a new audience and figure out what is the messaging that resonates with them? What's the brand promise that they're looking for that you can deliver on? And what's your point of difference? And so I think what's interesting about the boot camp is that it's worked on individuals as they were shifting their careers. It's worked on products. It's worked on businesses that are in existence, merging companies that need to create a new parent company. The fundamentals are all the same. But to me, brand transformation is as you're changing, how do we need to describe you in a new way to reach a broader audience, to sell more services, etc.
I like that and I love that. And I really think that where do you see brand transformation moving from where it is today and the support of what AI is helping, right? With because I think that it is a really interesting topic in terms of where like companies that actually manage the transformation and really the nuances that it entails. And how do you see the shift of it taking place?
I think that part of it is change management comes lockstep with this. And I've seen companies that have decided to deprioritize that piece of it. And I think internally the organization really struggles on how to do that because they don't have the change management tools. What I would say is sometimes the brand transformation is easier in large organizations than it is in smaller ones. And you think it would be the reverse. But nonetheless, brands are always evolving. It may be very quickly because of an acquisition or a merger, but it may be very slowly as well as they just introduce new services and then they step back and say, oh, wait, we're still using this marketing language that says we're this, but by the way, a year and a half ago, we became this and we're not telling anyone. Like we're missing opportunities to explain. So we think that it's always iterating. You just have to do it at a pace that your organization can keep up with the messaging and not get confused along the way, right? You can't be shifting your messaging every 3 weeks, but I do try to work with my clients and say, let's work on something that imagines between now and 3 years from now that the brand strategy elements are
Yes.
still relevant and still relate to your business and where you
Because
want to take it.
yes, because the foundation that we spoke about, rewind 15 minutes ago, is really what relates to this as well. Foundation is always going to be the same, even if we're marketing on the moon, as I like to say.
Right, right. And often what happens is when I do that competitive landscape with my clients, I say, where are we today? But where do we want to be? And then what are the things that are going to help us get there along the way? And that may take other strategy things like a strategic marketing roadmap and all sorts of other elements. Um, but another part to your question, and I'm going back to what that was. Oh, AI. Um,
AI,
I
yes.
yeah, I see AI as a great accelerant, especially as a small business owner. Sometimes the marketing messaging work will take me a good 30 hours if I'm working on the parent brand and then they have multiple sub brands and I'm writing out the brand messaging platform for first the parent brand and then the sub brands. And then I'm making sure that there's connectivity yet distinction from the sub brands it across the way, but also vertically. And having worked enough with AI to have then, once we have the brand strategy, to then take the brand personality and build custom bots to help me write the messaging, I've shortened that time frame of what may take me 30 hours of writing messaging and all the back and forth and the iterations and I need to let that simmer for a little bit. I'll go back and look at it 2 days from now. I've cut that timeline down to maybe 8 to 12 hours, which means that I can get a lot more done a lot more quickly for clients, especially if they've got a really tight time frame. It doesn't mean that AI writes it all. It is never perfect, but it may get me
And never a copy and
60% there.
paste. Yeah.
Right, right.
Yeah. It should never be a copy and paste because AI makes mistakes and it's not something that you want to do anyway, right? So, yeah.
But it's been a game changer. Honestly, I can't imagine
From the
someone
research
running a small
standpoint, for
business
sure.
without it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I 100% agree with you. How can mid-sized businesses take inspiration from large-scale, I love this question, loyalty models without the Disney size budget? And this is something I work with all the time to think about high impact, low cost for my clients. But I want to talk about that loyalty because loyalty programs like in Disney, loyalty programs in Starbucks, loyalty programs with credit card vendors, and so on and so forth. And let's not forget loyalty programs with airlines. These are the top four industries that are killing it in the loyalty business. But if somebody really wants to take and model after that, how would you position that from a smaller standpoint? Because I think it can still be done, but I'd love to hear your thoughts.
100% can be done. So what's interesting is that when you look at airlines, especially, they make more money off the loyalty program than they do on their core business, which is getting people from point A to point B. So that tells you the power of loyalty, right? At Choice Hotels, Choice Privileges, their loyalty program, from a revenue standpoint, was something like the third largest revenue driver within the brands as you think about their different hotel brands. So loyalty, while it people may or may not decide to engage in it, can be a huge driver of a business. But when you think about smaller businesses and what can they do, you can go back to really simple things like knowing your customer, know what makes Sheila tick, what's important to her, and delivering on that. Know something about her life, know something about what her passions are. Bring that into the conversation. Um, uh, I think that often what really creates an engaged loyalty program member is when they feel seen, appreciated, recognized, and valued. And you can do that with little to no money whatsoever as a small and medium business owner. And often when I was driving the Choice Privileges loyalty program and all the partnerships, we would look at what's the cost of a point, and then what's the aspirational perceived value of that point to a consumer. And the margin is where you have the financial magic, right? So the true cost of a point and what it costs me to pay for someone's free night when they redeem their points versus what's the perceived value of that room night worth to someone, or when they redeem for gift cards, etc. So that there is some math involved, right? But you don't have to start with the money. You don't have to start with something overly complicated. What I would say is I've seen sometimes to where, especially in the credit card space, um, you would build out such a robust value proposition for the credit card that over time it wasn't sustainable financially because the benefits were so rich. So you got to think it through really, really, really deeply before going into a loyalty program, which is why if you can start with things that make an emotional connection that have high perceived value and low cost to you, start there first.
No, I completely agree because and what do you perceive then also from the standpoint of learnings that could also take place from a B2B standpoint from a loyalty program?
Yep. Sometimes honestly, it's as simple as a handwritten note. Think of the last time you got one. Do you remember? Like I have one near me. I think I got it 6 months ago. It's it can be very, very simple. Like if you're, a roofing company and you're trying to work with a home builder, things like that. There are many different ways that you can build in that connection. And I think that when you have that emotional connection, you also deepen trust.
Yes, no, I do think that the distinction and the level of differentiation, I wanted to ask you that just so that it's clear, because we do have a lot of folks that are both B2B and B2C, and I always state that you can learn from other industries, and it's not necessarily just because it's a Disney and it's B2C and I don't know, you're in OEMs, for example, and manufacturing, that you wouldn't be able to take the learnings of something from a B2C company that is exceptional in terms of their delivery to be able to input that in terms of how you support your clients. Yes, the nuances are going to be different, but sometimes the foundations are there as well. When you look at partnership marketing, what makes a collaboration worth it? And what's the most underrated factor that brands often overlook? And I've seen this happen multiple times, especially when it is in larger enterprise companies. And I think that whatever you're going to come back with is going to be a lesson learned in terms of how small businesses need to really react, because those type of partnerships need to be hyper diligently looked at before jumping into them.
So I'll share an example of from my choice days. So we had data, right? Starting with data. And it said that Choice Privileges loyalty program members over index in spend in other types of hospitality. And they were things like golf, cruising, and all inclusive resorts, of which Choice doesn't offer any of those. So we started thinking, okay, well, if this is another way that our customers spend their money and like to vacation, where are complementary brands that excel in those that we could create partnerships with? And so we had a cruise partnership. We were working on a golf partnership and launched that. And then we're looking for an all inclusive. And often, if you think about it, like Hilton Grand Vacations is the sister company to the Hilton Hotel Organization. They had separated legally years ago, but they already had, like the timeshare piece of it or something. And often some of those are all inclusive resorts potentially, right? So we started talking with a particular brand, and then we started looking at what's the overlap in our customers. And you want to have some overlap, but not so much that you already are talking to the same people who you're talking to today, right? You want to see this partnership as a means by which you're expanding and creating new marketing channels, because they're their marketing channels where they can be talking about our brands together. And so I think that's a key piece of it. And then looking through and really figuring out, what do they need to make this a meaningful partnership? What does your organization need to make that a meaningful partnership? Is that possible? And what is the win for the consumer who's at the intersection when those two brands come together?
Yeah. Yeah.
So it takes a lot of work, and it also takes a lot of reality checks, because I think that sometimes in organizations, people fall in love with an idea and then they do the pro forma, and on paper they're like, that doesn't work. But you know what? I have a gut feeling that really is going to work. And you can convince yourself to make some decisions that probably aren't going to pan out long term. But you were so passionate about an idea, et cetera, that you convinced yourself that it was going to work out anyway.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I love that you mentioned that, like, they're so passionate about what could be. Because I was in an instance where I was in a larger media company. We partnered up with a company in an industry that was very separate, but was also in a subscription model. So think media connected to music. Let's exchange, our lists and so on and so forth. It in a way bombed, not because I think that it just wasn't set up right, but I do agree with you, because when you go into the details and you look at the performa and what's the setup and what's the shareability amongst the partnerships, if that's what you're looking to do, that's when reality sets in. And that's when you realize, even though I'm obsessed with this brand, business is done different versus just looking at a brand from a logo standpoint and a consumer standpoint, right? So
Right.
yeah. So it's interesting. Although I do really love partnership marketing, and at its most infancy stage, I definitely think it has a lot of legs and can work.
It's so fun. I mean,
Yeah.
my time at Bank One / JP Morgan Chase, I think was there 17 years. 13, 14 of those were specifically in partnership marketing and working with those brands on how to drive business that's mutually beneficial for the credit card company and the loyalty program and the hotel company. And how does it move the hotel company forward? How does it fill more hotel rooms and
Yeah.
drive more revenue for their business, right? So it does have to all really come together. And what I really liked about partnership marketing was it felt like I was in part an employee of that company, and I had like a lens inside what it would be like if I ever really went to work for them,
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
right?
And you get a sneak peek.
It's fascinating, yeah, to me.
Hmm.
And so it was really, really fun working with different brands like Starbucks, Best Buy, BP,
Yeah.
IHG, Toys R Us, like easily 30 different brands, all very different. It's
Yeah.
fascinating.
Thinking of loyalty programs, one of the ones that I really loved was not the Container Store. It was, what was the one that was like all essentials for like the bathroom and the home, and they just shut all their stores down. It was,
Are you
oh
thinking
my God.
Bed Bath and Beyond?
Yes. I used to love getting their like 20% discount postcards in my mailbox. And then it was just so great because their customer service was amazing. I mean, I'd get there. I mean, with some of them that I'd be like, I have it at home. Can you just like squeeze me in? you
And they
know?
do. They're scared.
Maybe that's why they went out of business, because everybody was getting squeezed in for their 20% constantly. You know what I
Like,
mean? So
what's funny is I've shared this story in other podcasts. So if someone's
yeah.
listening and they've already heard the story, sorry. But I did my own little social experiment when I was living in the Philadelphia area. I joined 3 loyalty programs of 3 sort of middle of the road chain sit down restaurants. And then I observed my specific behavior about how I engaged with each of the loyalty programs. So one was a pizza chain, and they would just send out coupons every Friday. It was like buy one get one free. Well, like I didn't need 2 pizzas, and I always knew that if I didn't get the pizza this Friday, sure enough I could get one next Friday with the discount.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
really didn't engage, because for
Yeah.
me the discount is not emotionally engaging in their brand. It's just
Yeah.
I pay less on
Yeah.
Fridays.
It's true. It's true.
And then there was an Asian cuisine chain restaurant, and they engaged you in the loyalty program and offered you like a free sample when they were launching a new menu item, come in early and try this new appetizer, whatever kind of thing. And that worked from time to time, but it wasn't enough frequency for me to stay top of mind with that brand. And by the way, they're all within like a 1.5 mile radius of my house. So it's not like I had to go any farther. The one that engaged the most with was Carrabba's. And they think it's like spend 20, get $5
You guys
off.
have a Carrabba's out in Orlando, right?
Yeah, we've got a couple. Yeah.
Yeah. We don't have it down here on South.
More interesting was because I got invited to wine dinners that were complimentary for the more frequent customers. And so twice a year, it would either be like a wine luncheon or a wine dinner. So 5 courses, pairings. They would do raffles, and all the money would go to a specific charity, because that was one of the tenets of their brand, is to work with charities, right? And I found myself going there more. Why? Because I felt seen and recognized and valued. It's what I was saying earlier. And it works in all different industries.
Yeah.
We're human.
Seen and valued is huge across B2B, B2C, every industry you can think of. So let's take a little bit of a shift into current state, and with how the world is evolving around, how marketing is, I should take that in a different direction, how marketing is evolving around the changes of the world. AI has always been around, but it's an explosion in terms of what's happening right now. Now, what does that say for, what feels different about the role of the CMO today compared to when you started?
Yep. Well, one, AI can be a great thought starter. You can bounce ideas off of it. You can say, I'm going to role play with you. I've got to work on a pitch. You pretend to be the ex prospect client. Poke holes in this, right? Give me the hardest questions, like push back on me to make my sales pitch be better, right? You can do it that way. What I would say is I've not seen AI have the ability to replace the lack of knowledge within certain organizations, to where you go in and you just ask really simple questions like, show me what you've done in the past 6 months of marketing. And they're like, here's an email, and we did this and we did that. And you go, well, why'd you do that? And they go, well, someone said we needed an email and we hadn't sent one in a while, so we did that. There's no connection between the business goal is this, therefore the marketing responsibility needs to be this. And especially if there's any sort of growth, what are you going to do from a marketing perspective that's above and beyond or different than, to have a better outcome or larger outcome to move the business forward? And one of the consistent things I've seen in my clients is that there's a lack of knowledge of what strategy really is in marketing, and how do you develop a sound strategy, and then how do you execute that?
Yeah. No, I like that. On your show, Marketing Over Bourbon, you create space for candid conversations, which I love. I mean, I think candid conversations across the board are super important. Just be transparent, just be open. What's the one topic in marketing you think we're not being candid enough about?
Ooh, well, so I've got an upcoming episode with a guy named Jeff Larson. He's most recently been the CMO at Princess Cruises. And before that, he was years and years running the in-house advertising team at Disney and at Disneyland. And I think that when you talk about money and spending on marketing, that's always one of those sort of private things, because it is something that reveals something about your business. So you don't want it to be publicly out there. But having a candid conversation with someone about when you have to make a reduction in your marketing spend and you got to cut like 35, 45, 55%, where do you make the cut? And how do you know you're cutting in the right place? And so he and I were talking about when he was at Disneyland and they faced a huge reduction in marketing. And because Disneyland is mostly a local drive market theme park. Yes. Do people come in from out of state? Yes. They fly in from all over the world, but it's more of a local theme park than it is a Walt Disney World destination. I'm going to stay for 4 or 5 days kind of thing. And so he decided to shift all of his marketing spend to, I think it was radio and billboards, because people spend more time driving around LA and California in their car. So you've got a captive audience in radio, and they're passing by the billboards and they go, "Oh, you're right. It's Halloween time. Yep. I want to go to that again this year," kind of thing. So I think that talking about marketing spend and how do you make those really tough calls and learning from other people can be invaluable.
Yeah, no, I really like that. Now, closing out on this in terms of if you could predict, what do you think is next in evolution and how brands will build loyalty and customer trust over the next 5 to 10 years?
Honestly, I don't know. I don't know. You look at some companies that have evolved their loyalty programs multiple times, like Starbucks. You mentioned Starbucks. There have been many different iterations of Starbucks loyalty. Um, when you think about a loyalty program, there are legal considerations because this is a financial book of business, and you have a certain amount of time for that book of business for people to redeem their points, right? So there's a huge complexities around this. It's hard for me to figure out in the next 5 years because that's such a, a big time frame to kind of see where do I think that's going to be. But even with airlines, you typically see shifts almost every year in terms of the values or the on-demand redemption rates for the miles required, or do they base the loyalty program on the number of flights or the miles, or is it just how much you spend per flight? You've said all those things are shifting. I don't know if there's one good solution. And I don't know if even if you picked an industry, if you said for this industry, this is the best practice.
Yeah.
I don't know if we figured that out yet.
Would you think that AI will have an impact in terms I'm sure they will from like an automation standpoint.
I think it would from an automation standpoint as well as, think about it. AI is great. If you go into Chat GPT 5 and you pick the thinking mode, I'm pulling in all sorts of really large PDFs, massive PDFs, and uploading a whole bunch of them and saying, consolidate all this, give me the best practices. And then from that, asking them lots of questions and then saying, great, now here's a new scenario. Let's build this out. What would this look like for this particular industry or this particular client? With the consolidation of all those best practices, right? So we think that AI can still be incredibly useful in gathering and crushing through a lot of really dense information
Yeah.
in a much more efficient time frame than what we all have the capacity to do.
Yeah. Yeah. I completely agree. Um, in terms of advice and action for someone stepping into their first CMO position or senior marketing role for that matter, what advice would you give them to avoid the biggest pitfalls? I know it's a loaded question because it could be almost in every angle, but I think from a 5,000-foot view, what have you learned over the course of your trajectory of, getting up to, being a CMO and I mean, mistakes always come around. So what have you learned that you can give advice to that comes to mind?
So my first role as a CMO was with a regional bank in the Central Florida and South Florida area that was investing in a lot of fintechs. And I had been on the credit card side, but not on the commercial banking side, the treasury side, et cetera. So I was coming in and I knew I had the marketing expertise, but I did learn another part of the business. And we went through that whole Butler branding bootcamp exercise for the overarching bank brand and then all of the sub brands of their different divisions. And so building really strong relationships with my peers who are running each of those parts of the organization, as well as my peer, the COO, and so forth, it became really clear to me that they were anxious to learn marketing as much as I
Mm,
was anxious to understand their business. And so creating those very open dialogues, collaborative approaches for them to realize that marketing isn't just an expense, it's an accelerant for their business if we use it in the best and highest good possible way.
yeah, no, I completely agree. That was well said. For entrepreneurs and small business owners listening, what's one loyalty or partnership tactic that they could implement this week?
Ooh,
Yeah, it goes back to talking about, at its origin, it could be quite simplistic. And I think maybe that question could be like, let's give it a case scenario. I mean, it's really dependent on the industry, it's dependent on the case.
it could be so many different things. If
Yeah.
you have a reoccurring service, it's probably being extremely well organized, understanding who your if you had to decile out all of your customers and look at them in tranches, and then having that tracking to say, this is the last time that I had a conversation. This is the last time that I had service with them. I'm going to proactively reach out, remind them that I'm here to serve them. Do they have any upcoming needs? Oh, by the way, how did your back surgery work out? Like whatever it is,
Yeah.
again, to make it very relevant and personal and a human connection type of thing. You could take that angle. You
Yeah.
could look at it from a recognition standpoint. Who have I done business with in the past year? And coming up with some sort of customer appreciation that you could do that again sort of just reminds them that you're here for their upcoming needs. It could take so many different forms. I think it doesn't cost a lot to be creative.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And I think a lot of what marketing is today, in terms of, thinking outside the box out of traditional marketing, it's really building out that creativity. And like one case study that I like, I mean, this isn't a partnership, but it's just how they entered into market is Liquid Death. And I talk about this so much on a lot of my podcasts, but it's like they really went out and they penetrated into the market as to where their audience was, and they went to concerts, they went to music festivals, and so on and so forth. So it's really just take learnings from other industries to put into your own, no matter what they're doing, and you can really just fine tune it in the best way possible so that it
Yeah,
works for you.
yeah. And honestly, I say this all the time: start by starting.
Start by
It's not going to be
starting.
perfect. You're not going to get it right all the time. Just start. When I started my show, I barely watched podcasts.
Yeah.
And and when one day I was like making the bed or something, and I had this thought. There are people who are becoming a parent for the first time today, and they're taking their baby home from the hospital. They don't
Yeah.
know how to be a parent. You figure it
Start
out.
by
You
starting.
just start by starting.
That's going to be the quote that we're going to pull from this. I love it. Sheila, it's been such a pleasure having you, and love the conversation and diving deeper into all things, partnerships, loyalty programs. I'm just, there's so much that we can learn from loyalty programs in terms of how companies really grow and, excuse me, really grow and build. And I think it's just fascinating across the board. I think they're case studies that we should all be looking at. So thank you for that.
Yeah, absolutely. This is so much fun. It's great to see you.
Yes, but we're not letting you go before we do our fireside round. And we usually drop in and ask you to describe something in one word, or, what's a habit or a myth. So I'm just going to fire away and just answer as it comes to mind. So if you could describe marketing today in one word, what would it be?
More strategy.
More
It's strategy. I wanted to figure out how to say strategic and creative and mash
Yeah.
up word.
I do like that. And I do wholeheartedly 250% agree with you. More strategy, more strategy, more strategy, more strategy. And it's interesting because having worked alongside McKinsey and Company when I was internal in a company where we hired them, McKinsey is obviously going through their own stuff because a lot of their high price tickets, items in terms of what they were doing for clients really was delving into the research. And now that AI can do that in a split second, they're looking to, rework and reshape. But they did talk about how it is helping them move through things a lot faster and really embed strategy into younger businesses processes and really ensuring that the foundation is set up. So I appreciate that. That is super important, and to make sure that that gets looked at across the board no matter what you're doing in marketing.
Yes. And I'm going to yes and that, which is you can have beautiful creative. I mean, like flawless, the most gorgeous campaign. It may not perform if you don't have the strategy behind it. And there's something that we would say a lot in credit card marketing: ugly works. So
Yes.
you would have like the control package of your direct mail package, and it looks sort of like a nondescript envelope, and you're like, oh, got it. Maybe I have to open it because I don't really like, I don't know what's in it. And turns out
Yeah.
it's the credit card direct mail solicitation. And you would try to test against that with the new control buster package. Ugly still worked every time.
You know, the more I just had this discussion with somebody that I'm running geofencing ads for, and he was the one that was like, let me take care of the creative. When I looked at it, I was like, I cringed, right? Because my background is in design as well. But then I remembered that ugly performs. And you know why I think it does is because we're not so focused on the layout and the creative and, how beautiful we can make it and the aesthetics, but we're more concerned with the screaming out, the call outs, like to get people's attention, which in the end of the day, it really does.
Yeah.
What's the daily habit that has kept you grounded and effective in your career? Is it making the bed?
I do. Well, I do try to meditate a couple minutes every day. But even more than that, I know when I'm getting burnout.
Yeah.
And I know where if I work even longer, yes, I would love to have closure. I would love to finish redlining this legal agreement, but I'm going to have to go back and do the entire thing over again if I work a minute more because I'm done. Like my brain is too mushy to do that. So I
Yeah.
think I've really learned what's my cutoff point to where it's just diminishing returns.
I like that. And it's super important. Mental health is really big. What is the one marketing myth you could bust once and for all?
Oh man. Oh, I could something popped into my head. I'm like, I don't think people are gonna like what I have to say.
No,
Um,
please. That's what we want.
I see a lot of brands trying to lean into influencer marketing.
Hmm.
And yes, it has a place depending upon what the brand is. It can be a component, but it doesn't replace good strategy.
Yeah, I completely agree. Well, Sheila, this has been so informative and so rich in terms of conversation. So we really appreciate you taking the time to spend it with us today. And until next time,
I loved every minute of it. Thank you so much. Great to see you.
thank you.